Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Over the next several episodes, guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2025 municipal elections. Mayors and city council members from all over Southern Utah are going to be seeking your vote in helping shape the future of our cities. So this is the place that you're going to be able to get one-on-one conversations with all the candidates to help you make the best decision for you come election season. So please make sure you like and subscribe, share it with other voters throughout Washington County, and make sure they have the information they need to make the decisions that are going to be best for us in the county. We hope you enjoy this episode and this series of episodes, guys. We'll see you out there.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Shavene Butler.
Shavene Butler.
How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Welcome to the Blue Form Studio, and you're running for Hurricane City Council, right?
Correct.
Nice, man. So tell me a little bit tell everybody who you are. Where'd you come from? Where you been?
Well, I'm Shavene Butler, Shavene Edward Butler. I'm from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. I was born and raised. Been there most of my life. Really interesting. I grew up privileged. Okay. We really didn't have to work for nothing, but if you had a color TV in the 80s, you were privileged.
Yeah,
okay?
That's true. So your parents would agree with that? They'd be like, yeah, we didn't want for nothing.
I think they worked hard.
Yeah.
I had a very hardworking father who worked hard to make sure that we had things on the table. Okay. We didn't miss a meal. Like I said, the funniest thing growing up in our neighborhood was the Butlers keep their air conditioning on.
Nice.
So that was one of the fun things.
So what'd your dad do?
My dad did various things. He first started off in the military. When he went to the military, fought in Vietnam. And then when he came back to the States, he kind of found himself aloof and lost and got into real estate and got into investments and got into financial consulting.
Cool.
And so that was a lot of things that my father did.
Nice. That was a smart thing to get into.
Absolutely, especially in the 80s.
Especially in the 80s. So you grew up there. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Maryville High School. Okay. Then I got a scholarship to go to Arizona State. And I majored in fraternity life. And
nice.
Got successfully kicked out of
Arizona State is good for that. Yeah. I have a friend who went to Arizona State, and he would probably have a similar one.
I followed it up with, back then we didn't have the portal. Okay. So when you didn't make grades, you had to go to a school that was lesser division than yours. Okay. And so at that time it was the Big Sky division. And that's when I attended Weber State and played 2 years of football at Weber State.
Okay, cool.
And then after Weber State, I finished up at University of Arizona.
Nice. What'd you get your degree in?
Political science.
Nice. Political science. Cool. That's what my degree was in as well. What was the idea that you were going to use that for?
A branch to law school. Yeah. Originally.
Yeah, that was mine too.
Because you really didn't, political science is either you're going to be a historian who's going to learn history and learn about and teach the political aspects of things, or you're going to go to law school and grow on that with a political science background.
And so law school, did you end up going to law school?
No, I kind of got disenfranchised by law. It was really weird. I wanted to be a defense attorney. Which is ironic because I ended up needing a defense attorney later in life.
Okay.
But the funniest thing about it was I didn't like the idea behind that you can go defend somebody that you knew was guilty. Yeah. I didn't believe in that. Okay. Yeah. I believe that if you went in there and you defended an innocent person, then that's great. Yeah. But, there was not all many, Matlock, episodes of Matlock and Perry Mason. They didn't end that way. It was the real world. So I was kind of disenfranchised by the law.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do. Yeah. Defense attorneys, that's the thing with attorneys. They get a bad rap, but they got to do the job that they get hired for sometimes.
Absolutely.
So that's a tough thing to do. So what'd you end up doing? What'd you do for work?
Well, I kicked around college after I got out of college and tried various jobs and everything and found myself working for my father's company. But when you find yourself working for your father's company, you get father wages.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of disappointing at times, but I learned a lot in the financial consulting business. And it helped me to set a platform for my life and to see basically what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Okay. But there was a darker time in my life where, I believe in transparency, first of all. And that darker time led me down some roads that, ended up costing me a lot. So when they talk about losing your freedom and fighting back to get your self-worth, I think I'm the expert at that.
Yeah. Yeah. What happened? Yeah, I gotta know.
Oh, well, I just went down a dark path.
Yeah.
Okay. You are an element of your 5 friends.
Yeah.
As my wife tells me all the time. And I love her so much for that, saying that. And the 5 friends, not that I wasn't responsible enough for myself, but I didn't lead by example.
Yeah.
Okay. And I found myself going through a dark period of alcoholism, experience with drugs, and those things cost money.
Yeah.
And I came up with creative ways of getting money, which got me caught. The old song, I fought the law and the law won.
Yeah.
Well, the law won.
The law won.
And I had to dig myself out of that hole.
So how'd you get to Hurricane?
That's a good story too. My wife, who I met in 1995.
Shout out to Emily.
Shout out to Emily. I love her so much. She is my spirit. She's my spirit angel. She said, look, after 1995 and going through my bad period of time, we reconnected through Facebook. So we call ourselves the Mark Zuckerberg relationship, because she found me on Facebook and I couldn't believe it. It was a 25-year lapse in time. And she goes, well, I used to know you and I want to know if you're a better person now.
Yeah.
And so we got back together. She was going through a period where she was going through her divorce. And I was going through a period where I was trying to get off probation and parole and get my life together. And we reconnected.
Yeah.
And it's been 7 years and we're now married, been married for 2 years. And we have a very well blended family.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lifestyle that I always thought I was capable of having. And it was because of Emily. I really, truly believe that God and Emily saved my life.
That's awesome, man. So when did you move to Hurricane?
We moved to Hurricane 23, right after we got married in 23.
Okay.
And she said, look, your past is in Arizona. There's too many ghosts. There's too many opportunities for you to, derail yourself. The one thing that people need to understand is once you have been afflicted with drug and alcohol, it's a constant battle. And a lot of the demons still lived within that realm. And though I was fighting a battle and winning, she still thought that we needed to give ourselves a chance away from all the calamity that surrounded being in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so we literally spent the map threw a dart and hit Hurricane. But we didn't. We landed in Laverkin first.
Yeah.
And my sister-in-law told me, you need to look at this place over here. And so we accredit her, Charlotte, for finding Hurricane for us. And we couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. So let's talk about what's making you want to run for city council. What's one of the driving forces to getting into it?
Well, I believe that city council, I believe firstly, locally, at the local level, okay? I believe that that's where you can make your mark. That's where you can do the most for your community, that you can help society better by serving at the local level of government. And I think that it was just the perfect time, the perfect storm. We were able to achieve a lot because when we came here, I got elected as our precinct chair. And we just went to caucus for President Trump. And next thing you know it, I'm precinct chairman. And the funniest thing is I beat Willie Billings in that competition. And I did not know that he was Willie Billings.
The Willie Billings.
And his wife was Mayor Danette Billings.
Yeah.
And so we literally went there for just a caucus and to vote for President Trump. And it turned out really good. I ended up getting elected to chair. And it opened up a lot of doors for me to really see how local government was working. And it was very, very exciting.
So what is that role? How would you define the role of local government? Where do they fit in?
Community.
Okay.
I really, truly, strongly believe that you have to have a strong sense of community and wanting to help your fellow resident, your fellow citizen. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of problems that we have that I don't think people understand that you have to be, because we are a representative government. I do believe that we are a representative government, meaning that we do pick people that will be our voice. Mm-hmm. And I do think that is emphasized more at a state, not at a state level, but at a city level, at a local level, mm-hmm. in the municipalities.
Mm-hmm. So the role of that government is to serve the community. Is kind of
I truly believe that.
Yeah. Okay. How would you define leadership in the context of public service? Like, how does leadership show itself in public service, if that makes sense?
By example. Okay. I do believe that leadership is strong about how you present yourself, what you stand up for, what you're willing to fight for, what you're willing to do for your community.
Yeah.
Because all people aren't born to be leaders. All people aren't born to be quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But the true leadership, they rise above, mm-hmm. and they do the things necessary to protect society, protect your residents, protect your community. And yeah. I think true leadership is something that's learned and inherited.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, here's another one. Do you think that leadership requires absolute consistency?
If you don't have consistency, what do you have? Okay?
Yeah.
You have bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And so I do think that you need to be consistent in your decisions. You need to be consistent and show a pattern, because I think consistency is about showing a pattern, mm-hmm. and being able to follow through on what you say, mm-hmm. you know?
So absolute consistency, do you think there's some flexibility in that requirement
Yeah. You know, there's nothing absolute but death.
Yeah.
You know,
taxes.
I don't know.
Death and taxes.
It's been shown that you can't avoid taxes in certain, well, we'll talk about that later. But I do think you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
I don't think that we have all the answers as leaders. I do believe that you do need to listen to your constituents, and you do need to go with not really your gut instinct, but I think instinctively your feelings on how the situation arises.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, let's talk about the relationship between local government and the higher levels, like state and federal. Where do you feel like what does that relationship look like? What should it look like, and what does it look like now? Do you see a disconnect between leadership or the local leadership and the state leadership? How do you view that relationship going on right now, from hurricane to the county to the state? Well,
and that's interesting, because I had the pleasure of being precinct chairman. I met a lot of leaders. Mm-hmm. Emily and I got a chance to go to the state convention. Mm-hmm. We went to the national convention, and we went to the inauguration.
Oh, cool.
And therefore, we met a lot of people. And I do think that we have great people in government. Mm-hmm. But I would like to see a more uniform system where, you know, there were checks and balances on different levels. If you talk to people, the one thing that most people that I've talked to that are upset with is role of government. Mm-hmm. How does local government work with state government and work with federal government? Mm-hmm. I think there's a misunderstanding of what priorities are at each level. Mm-hmm. And I wish we can come up with a clearer definition so the people will better understand what the role of government is at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And I do think that starts with leadership.
How do you see that? What those roles look like?
I would like to see more communication. Mm-hmm. Okay, I would like to see more acceptance. And the one thing that I've been watching on the news, that's on the news, and I hope we all say a prayer for the children in Texas. 105 today.
That's crazy.
And I'm listening to the news, and you don't see accountability.
Yeah.
Nobody's willing to take accountability. The mayor's passing it off to the commissioners. The commissioners are passing it off to FEMA. FEMA's passing it off to the government. But nobody's willing to take accountability, okay? And I like to see better communication. So I haven't been in a hostile environment or anything where I need to see where leadership roles does come into part. But I do see them working together. But I like to see more cohesiveness in there. I would like to see the state stepping in, our commissioners stepping in and helping the city if we need to help. I think we have an incredible mayor. I'm a fan of our mayor, and not just because I know her husband very well. I just think she's done a really good job. Yeah. But I would like to see more communication, and so that's what I hope to bring. Is better communication with the local, state, and federal levels. Do you think
that communication happens? It just happens in a different vein from those that don't have a seat, that aren't sitting at in a city council seat or a commissioner seat. Do you think that communication happens, or do you see that there's a breakdown there? Have you noticed that?
I have noticed it, especially in Hurricane. Yeah. Okay. It seems like people are a little upset with our commissioners. What our commissioners are doing. But I don't really know if they understand what the commissioners can do and what their ability to lead is. And I would like to see better communication with the public. Yeah. Okay. Because I do think that we are all there to serve the public, or we are elected to serve the public. Yeah. Even as a precinct chairman, my job is to represent my precinct 10, that I try very hard to listen to the people and hear what their concerns and issues are, because they're depending on me to voice that up the level. And I would like to see better participation in that aspect.
That makes sense. Okay. So, what role does the community input play in your decision-making process, and how do you weigh it against your own judgment? Does that make sense?
It's a balancing act. Okay.
So that goes back to that communication.
Everything comes back to communication. A lot of our problems could be solved if we just listen. Become better listeners. My wife gets on me all the time. She goes, you don't seem to listen to me. And I go, I'm listening all the time. But are you hearing what I say? Yeah. Okay. I could sit here and go, yeah, I'm listening to you. And then be watching the Dallas Cowboy game over here, screaming and yelling at them. Yeah. But am I listening to what she says? And so I do think as leaders, we need to listen to our public, but not only listen, hear what they say. Yeah. Hear where their feelings are. Hear where their heart's at. Because I think right there you can find, you can bridge the gap of communication.
So what does that role, that community input, like how much of a role is that going to play in your decision-making process? Are you going to, look at your own understanding and knowledge of the decision? How are you going to implement that community input? How do you plan on kind of laying that out as you go through decision-making process and in the city council votes and things like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it depends on the situation. Okay. First off, I'm there to represent them. I'm there to be their voice. But they also elected me to represent them. And they have to understand that I have to use my instinctive understanding of the problem to kind of get to the root of the subject. And I do believe that in a representative government, you have to understand what is being said. If somebody says, I need higher wages, okay, I don't know what role I can do, but I can be the facilitator to find the answers of how we can bring the wages in. Okay. So I can't sit there and wave a magic wand and say higher wages. Okay? Right. You make $15 an hour or $17 an hour, but we can find the steps necessary. And I hope that the public who elected me or will elect me, or I pray that will elect me, will understand that I'm just a conduit to work for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. This is an interesting balance between, we battle this quite often in Southern Utah. How do you choose between preserving cultural heritage and fostering innovation in Hurricane? And which would you prioritize and why?
Well, coming to be that I'm just 2 years new to Hurricane, there's a lot of beauty. It's out of my wheelhouse on what I learned in Arizona. It's a completely different community. The funniest thing when we came here, I told Emily, now I know what it was like on the Andy Griffin show, okay? Because you came here and the hospitality was in your face.
Yeah.
You know, people were happy to see you. People were shaking hands. They were, you know, joking with you, very jovial. And, you know, we went to the Rooster Run restaurant and had a home cooked meal, and it was restaurant food, but it felt like a home cooked meal.
Yeah.
And I said, man, this is probably what being in Mayberry, USA felt like, you know?
Yeah.
But the reality of it is there is expansion, there is need for growth. Okay. But I think that you can do controlled growth. I don't want to disturb the beauty of what Hurricane is. You know, we're the gateway to Zion, you know, but at the same time, I do want to respect the people who built this community and understand that, you know, can we grow and still respect the beauty and luxury of what Hurricane offers us? Because we're very happy here. I'm a city boy. I was born with skyscrapers and different things, you know, stadiums. And when we go back and visit Arizona, we can't wait to get back in the car and come back to Hurricane.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I never thought that I would enjoy the simplicity of a smaller city.
Yeah.
And so how do you maintain that balance? Boy, that's $1 million question right there.
Yeah.
But what I would do is I would respect the community that has lived here longer.
Yeah.
You know, you look at, I think it's 207 years that I'm up against.
Yeah.
My 2 years of experience of living here in Hurricane versus 207 years. That's a tough hill. That's a tough battle.
There's a lot of history.
A lot of history.
A lot of history. Okay, so what is the role of economic growth in St. George or in Hurricane's well-being, and how does it compare to other priorities like quality of life and cultural preservation? You know, there's obviously a role there. What does that role look like? And then how is it in the list of priorities? Where would you put that economic growth in the priority list?
Economic growth has to happen for the success of Hurricane. I really do believe that. But the one thing that the constituents that I've been meeting has said, my kids are moving out of Hurricane because they no longer can afford Hurricane. And that's sad. You know, you raise your kids up here in this beautiful climate, this beautiful city, and now they can't afford it. And you're like saying, what's going on? What's happening here? And it's the wages. Okay. The wages don't meet supply and demand. You know, the homes, so do we love the mountains? Do we love the streams? Do we like the hiking? Do we like the biking? Absolutely. But there has to be economic growth. So I would think it's probably a little higher on my priority because I want to see the success of Hurricane grow. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. The town, when we were there in the 60s, was around 40 to 50,000 people. Well, there's only 26,000 here in Hurricane today. So we thought that was a small town when we grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. Now we're at 1.3 million. Okay.
That's crazy.
Compared to 26,000, and that happened with growth. That happened with expansion, but it was in moderation. And so I would like to see it moderately grow, but still hold on to the beauty and respect the culture that's already here and instilled.
Nice. Okay. Is it acceptable for local government? I'm going to stick on this economic growth. Is it acceptable for local government to prioritize economic growth over the environmental protection? If so, under what conditions? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't think that our elected officials were elected by people who want to see growth. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't believe that that was the case. I don't think that the people who elected you for your seat as a mayor, a commissioner, a councilman, congressman, I don't think that they said to you, go out and expand. And so I think you have to listen to your constituents.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there has to be a balancing act between the constituents, understanding that growth is necessary to evolve, to keep Hurricane what it is. So it's a delicate dance, but I think it can be done. I think if we listen to what's really going on, and try to preserve what we can, I really think it's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah. Do you think, when you think of environmental protection, what does that cue in your head?
I think environmental protection comes to what we call BLM, okay?
Okay.
Right, and
Bureau of Land Management.
Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah.
And that's a funny story there, because I think that the government should keep their hands off of what we do have. This is Utah land. This is not federal government land, okay? And I do think that the environmental protection, I mean, I don't know what a turtle, land sea turtle or something that EPA says, okay, we got to protect this land. And therefore the government steps in. And we're like, what? We were driving down the road with some friends, and the cockroaches, they needed to be protected because of their the value that they bring to the environment. And you're like, protecting the cockroaches.
Yeah.
Wow. So I do think government should pull back with their restrictions and let Utah be Utah. Give our land back to the people who live here. I do believe that.
Do you think it has, do you think there's an element, when I think of environmental protection, I think of a lot of different things. I think the desert tortoise is a primary
Desert
one.
tortoise. There
Yeah,
you
the
go.
desert tortoise. I called it a turtle a couple of times on the podcast about a year ago. I got a lot of heat for that. It's not a turtle, everybody. It's a tortoise.
The tortoise.
Desert tortoise. And interesting story about the tortoise. So the tortoises, they were building up Snow Canyon corridor. They were building the road to Snow Canyon. It used to be called Turtle Road. Turtle Road, not Tortoise Road. It used to be called Turtle Road. They come across the tortoise. The EPA comes out, and they stop development across the entire county, right? Because it's a endangered species. So our permitting process for all development, whether it's housing, businesses, every permit is contingent upon our ability to protect that tortoise, right? And that's comes down from the federal government, right? There's no one else to appeal to, right? We can't go to the state and say, hey, we should be able to get this out. Nope, federal government says you can't build anything until you protect this tortoise. And willingly, the community is like, yeah, let's protect the tortoise. Let's carve out these different areas. Obviously, Red Mountain, where the tortoises already exist. From what I understand, our area has one of the most genetically diverse populations of desert tortoise over all of its area. So it goes all the way down to the Sonoran Desert in Mexico, right? So the Mojave Desert tortoise. So it's a offshoot of that. We have the most genetically diverse tortoise, which helps its existence, span longer, right? The more genetically diverse it is, the more able it is going to be able to reproduce and multiply and all those things. So we got to protect this really valuable tortoise as far as its species goes, in the world. So this is a restriction there. So there's that one thing that's set off here. That's actually a big one for us in the county. But what about like pollution and water and traffic and these other environmental impacts that economic growth and development of the growth? What do you think about, like, especially like water and things like that? How do we balance that economic growth in the water?
I'm really amazed at your knowledge about the turtle or tortoise.
I talked to a lot of people about. I did a whole series on the Northern Corridor, and so I interviewed Conserve Southwest Utah. I did a bunch of research on my own. I interviewed Sitla, so Kyle Paisley, he's the director of real estate at Sitla. I talked to the county attorneys, so I was trying to get an idea. It's like, okay, why are we trying to? What's so important about the tortoise? But then also, how do we navigate this restriction that we have set forth on it? So I did a lot of research on it. So if you want to go back and listen to those ones, you can do that.
I'm going to.
There's a lot.
I think that with all growth, you have the problems. Okay. I do know that pollution is a problem. I do know that the water, conservative, keeping the water safe for drinking water. These are things that are necessary to preserve. I don't know what the value of the tortoise has for expansion and growth, but does it need protection? I guess as well as anything else. I think the problem that I have is that we're being regulated to protect and stop growth because of a tortoise.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just gave me a new whole way of looking at it. I guess everything has value, but I also think expansion and growth has value.
Yeah.
To keep up, if we are just allowing the tortoise to survive in the environment, and it's cutting down on pollution, it's cutting down on water waste, land waste, then there's a checks and balancing system. But I do think that you have to evolve.
Yeah.
You have to evolve.
Yeah. What's one of the key agendas that you're really would like to see implemented in Hurricane as you guys move forward?
I'm big on something near and dear to my heart, hunger. Okay. I did not know that there were so many people that depended on Utah Food Bank.
Yeah.
That it was shocking to me. Because I've been volunteering over at the Utah Food Bank, and I'm amazed at how many people come in there. Last week, served 2,600 people.
Yeah.
These people are hungry. They don't want a handout. They want a hand up. And I think that's one thing that's missing. I think mental illness. There's a lot of people, we don't really see it here on a grandiose scale, but mental illness. I want to control our culture. I want to control our environment, and I want to help the people.
Yeah.
And so I want to be a voice for the people. I want to be a voice for people with building homes, building affordable homes, having food to eat. The one thing that I shared with Emily every time I come back from working at the food bank, I said, you know what? They seem so happy.
They are super happy over there.
And she goes, what do you mean? I said, they are so happy. They want to create an environment where a person can feel comfortable to come in there and not feel that you're being looked at negatively because you can't put bread on the table today. And they create an environment that made me excited to work there.
Yeah.
And then you see the people that come in that are citizens. They're human beings.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is something that I think that we all have an innate ability to do better for the citizens and for our culture because we all are Americans.
Yeah.
I hate when we get put into demographics. I hate demographics. I hate identifying as a Black American, a tall American, a rich American, a poor American. I hate identifying as that. We're all human beings. Okay. And we belong to this greatest country in the world. And so I would like to see more pride and attention paid on the people who've made us great.
Yeah.
And to help. And that's what my job is, to be a voice for the people who don't have a voice, to be a hand to help people who need a hand.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope I can bring. And I hope that's what they see in me as I try to go and win this election. Sweet,
man. Well, I think that's a good one to wrap on. Where, if they want to find out more information about you, where should they go?
Facebook.
Facebook's the spot.
Facebook it's Shavene Butler on Facebook, and I have a political page called Dems versus Me on Facebook, and it's really funny because it's a take on Democrats versus Republicans. I identify as a conservative. I even think that word Republican has been watered down. We are Americans, okay, and we should act like Americans.
Yeah.
So I think I have a long road ahead of me. I have an incredible team. I look at it like trying to be a part of the Patriots in their heyday.
Yeah.
Okay? I have an incredible bench of people, and I have incredible people who are running for office against me, and it's just an honor to be mentioned amongst them.
That's awesome, man. Well, check them out on Facebook. Good luck. Hurricane election. Ballots are going to be in the mail in just a couple of weeks, guys. Make sure you get voting in the primaries, and then general election is going to be coming around after that. Good luck, Shavene. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me. I enjoyed this.
And don't forget to go to votestg.com to find all the candidates listed for Ivan, Santa Clara, St. George, Washington, and Hurricane City. Mayors, city council members across the county are being elected. So don't get discouraged that we're in another election season. Make your voice heard at the local level. Go to votestg.com and check it out. And make sure you check out Shavene. And we'll see you out there, everybody. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.